You represent one of the big global healthcare companies. I mean, pharmaceuticals, devices, diagnostics, biotech, the whole gamut you're involved in a big way. So it's great to have you here. What can the life sciences and the healthcare business be in the modern era? How big can it be? How influential can it be as a business sector?
Okay, so thank you. And I think it's a little bit, no offense, the wrong question here.
Okay.
Because the topic here is geopolitics, it's growth, right, around that. And you will not have growth without having a healthy population. So I think the interesting question is, if I would particularly look to Europe, pharma and biotech is pretty much the last crown jewel that Europe has left as a muscle. AI, we already lost that. Right? That's already gone. Car industry, China is eating our lunch.
Can we just keep the noise down a little, please, so everybody can hear Michael's words? Thank you very much appreciated. Sorry, Michael.
So when it comes to automobile industry or chips, China is eating our lunch alive, and our energy costs are actually a joke, and we are extremely interdependent. So literally the only one high technology area where Europe can still play a major role globally because of the infrastructure we built over decades, that would be in pharma and biotech.
Right, that's interesting that you should say that. I mean, you know, people might say you would say that because that's the sector you represent. I suspect there are people out there who still think Europe has an important role to play in technology, in AI, and in some of the services areas where Europe can be a champion, a global champion.
I think Europe can be a champion when it comes to the application of technology. But if I look at healthcare, and everybody would agree, in order to reduce inefficiencies in the healthcare system, you need to use technology. Like the European health data space, those are baby steps. If I go to China and I go to a hospital, I'm not going to have an electronic patient record or a card. I scan myself with a mobile phone. I'm getting to the first doctor, and by the time I'm leaving the doctor, my data and outcomes have already been transferred. And by the time I'm coming home, my medicine, if I get a prescription, has already been delivered to my doorsteps. This is what we are competing with. And when it comes to clinical trial, if you look at sort of like the number and the speed of clinical trial, how it's run there, at the moment, global R&D budget, growth of global R&D budget in Europe is 5.4%, China 13%.
Right.
So there are just areas where the ship has sailed.
Okay. I mean, that's really interesting, placing healthcare as a strategic bet for Europe as a global leader.
Well, the interesting thing is it's not me doing that. If you would go, and again, I have to call it out because this is what we're competing with, right? It's US, it's China. And then do not forget there are other countries, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, and what all those countries where you have an industry that is thriving and is significantly growing is, they understood and defined pharma and biotech as a strategic sector. Right. It's embedded in defense, it's embedded in health security, and all of them have a plan how to do that. And this is what we are competing with here in Europe.
I have to ask you this question.
Sure.
You're the head of external affairs international.
Yeah.
Why are you sticking up for Europe?
First of all, I'm Austrian.
Okay.
So I'm in the heart of Europe, and I still think that Europe has something that we're here in Greece. I mean, there's a beauty about Europe, right? There's a reason why philosophy was developed here, ethos, logos, pathos, all coming out of Greece, and I think this is still a key differentiator. Quality of life is really amazing, and by the way, I also reject the notion that an aging society is a challenge. I'm turning 60 in 2 years, and I'm not going to be a challenge in some parts, but I reject the notion. It's going to be a challenge if you're not making the right decisions right now.
Okay. One thing I'd like to give you the opportunity to comment on, because I think you're the perfect person to do it. It's easy to consider healthcare a cost base, as it were, a national social cost base. On the other hand, it is an important contributor to productivity, to economic growth. Can you explain that equation, how you see it as a pharmaceutical producer?
Yeah, so I can explain it as an economist, and I'm like 30 years in pharma, right around it, but I have a normal life outside. I have an aging mother who is a nurse. I have all my sisters and nieces working in healthcare, so I have a very hands-on practice of what's going on there. And I think I want to refer what the minister previously said, right? He said, like, I do believe your numbers. I do believe €1 invested in Europe generates €6, but my problem is this is long-term, and my budget is 12 months. So I dare to say we might not have a cost problem only. I think we have an accounting problem when it comes to healthcare, and accounting rules can be changed. Because as long as we're looking at medicines, and by the way, it's not only medicines, that's the problem why we are not investing in prevention, that is the problem why I diagnose too late, because we would sacrifice short-term budget security over the long-term impacts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. As if things weren't difficult enough in the sector, we've got this pressure coming from the US administration on pricing pushing for international reference pricing. With your international hat on, do they have a case? And with your European hat on, how can should Europe respond to that pressure?
So, first of all, I think everybody would agree, what we don't want is importing the system, the US healthcare system, into Europe. Because if you compare our systems in terms of patient outcomes, we actually do a pretty good job in that one. I think the only reason Europe can respond that this is really a challenge, it's like the same thing with the capital market. Europe is not one market for an innovative pharma company. So I launch or I register in one European institution. So the HTA, European HTA, that's sort of like a single authority I have to deal with. But in the second, I want to go to the market, I have 27 systems. So I have the whole shebang, from crazy clawbacks here in Greece, up to slicing and dicing in those other countries. And if Europe really, really wants sort of like put a stake in the ground and attract innovation and investment, I think they need to think about how can we create really also a single market in some of those areas.
Okay, just to stick with the pricing question for a second. Correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the pharma industry, apart from the rest of healthcare, gets more than half of its revenue from the US market.
Correct.
That doesn't sound right. Can't be possible that half of your sales by volume or by value are going into the US. So I repeat, do they have a case? Does the administration have a case that American consumers are being treated unfairly?
I need to differentiate, and I think we should leave emotions outside here. From a US perspective, what is right is that, based on global numbers, US is paying more. US patients are paying more, but they're also paying more because the US system is pretty inefficient. And they have something we don't have, where you have a lot of middlemen in between. So if I would sell a drug at 100 in the US, it could up to 1,000 because of the middlemen. That's a different topic. What the administration actually was addressing was the global R&D and research, where the US is actually paying, if you look at the global investment, up to 70% of the cost. So this is where they come from. And I think we need to, and this is like, I want to pitch what Kavita said before, it's like, we need to address this as a shared accountability and a shared challenge that we are facing. If you start as a government looking at it as a pharma problem, you might really wake up in a very different world.
Okay, we've got time for 2 questions, as long as your answers are brief, and they've been
Good.
Admirably brief so far, so I'm optimistic. We were not even addressed by, we interrogated a humanoid embodied AI earlier on in the day. I don't know if you were here and saw it, quite extraordinary. How is this new wave of technology changing the pharmaceuticals business? I understand, somebody sent me a link the other day, the first drug, the first molecule discovered by an AI has gone into advanced phase testing.
Yeah. So there are like 2 phases. One would be like really early in research and development, what you see there, and tremendous speeding up. It took just in order to discover what we call a target, so something that would give you a hint that you might be able to develop a drug, that could have taken up a couple of hundred researchers in a lab, white coats for a year. AI can do that within 24 hours and it gives me 10 targets. So that's good news for sort of like, it's more efficient in research and development. It will be more efficient. But then when you look at the other side, when it comes to how will a medicine or a diagnostic test find its way to the patient, somebody mentioned today the shortage of healthcare workers.
Yes.
So by 2030, we are lacking 10 million healthcare workers around the world. Nurses, doctors around it. We are actually the problem makers here because we are sucking out the talent from low and middle income countries. If you go in my hometown in Vienna to a hospital, I guarantee you every third nurse is from the Philippines. Which means we are benefiting from it, but the system in the Philippines, when it is cracking, their technology can play a role. Or if I look at Greece, if you are a patient and you're sitting on an island and you don't have a hospital there, telehealth, telemonitoring, that will help tremendously. And that's not a fiction, we know it, because in Australia it's already a reality. Or in Indonesia, which is like you also have a lot of islands where people are living, they are already using the technology. But again, Europe needs to speeden up.
Okay, we really are pushed for time. So very brief on the final question, which is, Greece has moved quickly. I don't know whether it's moved well. Let's assume that it has in the healthcare area, but as in so many other areas, it's moved very quickly. There's been a lot of reform, a lot of change. What lessons can the rest of Europe take from Greece's response to the supply problems that it's...
So I think the biggest asset that Greece has is actually its people and the talent and the creativity. And I was sitting yesterday at the, I think it's the CEO of the Metaxa clinic, an oncology clinic somewhere here in Athens. And he showed me pictures on his phone. He introduced the concept that he brings therapy dogs to patients who are getting chemotherapy. And you see patients next to a Labrador. I think his name is Dylan. And you see those patients laughing and smiling. So I think the big asset, I think Greece, if you aim for brick and mortar and hospital manufacturing, that's the wrong path. You will just not get it. Not from research-based, but there's a lot of in still making medicines human and reaching the patients, and I cannot think of another European country where that could be a competitive advantage. In the time where everything speaks about technology, it still will be people who are using that technology. And there is an advantage.